Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Vikings win in Seattle for the first time in 18 years.
Luke Inman on X at Luke_Spinman. All I want for Christmas is more KOC locker room speeches. I need them.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan with the Wide Left Substack. I am wearing my Miami Seahawks shirt to commemorate the only NFL team, 1946, that has ever deserved the name Seahawks.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talks Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome in another Minnesota football party on a Victory Monday, the 8th consecutive on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thanks so much for watching, listening, commenting, and hey, subscribe if you could. Get us to 9,000 subscribers before the end of the season. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate you making us your first watch or listen today. For your second one, check out the absent Luke Braun. He's doing Locked On Vikings daily, Locked On Vikings podcast feed. He's usually the fourth member of our crew, and you can hear our audio on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed as well. Vikings beat the Seahawks. Win of the year, some might say, 27-24. We'll get into all the moments that mattered as the Vikings come away with an 8th consecutive win. We'll have an honest conversation about where the Vikings defense is at as the season comes to its final 2 games. We've got nerdy stats as we do every Monday, and we'll start turning the page to Packers week. Big matchup Sunday against the green and gold as the Vikings go for the 1 seed if they win the last 2 in the regular season. Of course, we've got our week 16 bets results with some crazy beats, good and bad yesterday. I've worked my way back into the mix. I'm back, baby. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. This is not a typo. New customers can place a $5 bet and get $250 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Arif Hasan, Luke Inman, what a win. I mean, Luke Inman hosted the postcast yesterday, and we talked it out, and we'll give Arif the first word here since we haven't heard from him yet. What a big boy win for the Minnesota Vikings. When you think about that, the building where you've had ghosts for almost 2 decades, you have to come from behind. You have to do it in the rain. You're missing Harrison Smith. You need they need the win. You need the win. What a fantastic victory.
I think we've seen this movie so many times, right? Over the last, how many times have they lost and said, we've seen this movie. We know what's going to happen. Okay. But Arif, go ahead. Give us the first word. But, it was a big boy win.
So it's just really funny. Sam's like, Arif, I'm going to give you the first word. Hey, Luke Inman here. No, it's fantastic. I think that, this is actually only one of the few instances where the Vikings had to generate a comeback against, what the direction of win probability. It was usually that the Vikings had maintained a lead or found themselves in a winning position throughout most of the game and just had to stave off a comeback. And now the Vikings have a comeback. That's really awesome. But I think also, we've kind of entered a point where the Vikings have generated essentially every kind of win, right? They've had big blowout wins. They've had fake 1-score games, real 1-score games, come from behind games. They had an overtime game that should never have gotten to overtime, right? They have all kinds of, the comments are going off about the Seahawks thing. I thought me wearing the Miami...
Don't even acknowledge it. Just let it happen. Let it happen.
Look, but no, I think that this kind of showcased a lot of things that the Vikings kind of need to demonstrate in terms of their quality as a team for us to trust them, which of course is how they get you. Yeah, I think their ability to generate that kind of comeback is huge. I think the fact that they did it after building a multi-score lead, letting it go, losing the lead in the fourth quarter, and then getting it back in order to secure the win. That was huge. It's against a good quarterback like Geno Smith. It's against a really great set of receivers that did cause them a lot of problems, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. There's like not much to say. Like it's the kind of win that by itself does not tell you very much about the quality of the team, but in concert with all of the things that the Vikings have done, tell us the Vikings are a pretty high quality team.
Yeah, to Arif's point, 72.2% Seahawks win probability. That was with 4 minutes and 8 seconds left in the game. And to Arif's point, like outside of the two losses, I mean, Vikings just haven't been in that type of position many times this year. So finally got to see some things. I think more for like the Vikings fan base, everybody watches the show, right? Everybody who's dialed into the Vikings all year long. We know Sam Darnold's been balling out, but like it felt like more of the national media when you flipped on NFL Network or Sports Center or whatever it may be, like everybody finally kind of clicked over to like, that was the Sam Darnold game we've been waiting for. And to Reef's point too, this is not good for Vikings fans because maybe this is the beginning of the end where now everybody's on board, everybody's on the wagon, and everybody's on the hype train, and we know how usually that ends up.
This is how we open our hearts, right?
This is how it starts.
No, Luke, to your point, I think that's a good point because every kind of national thing that I turned to, whether it was like the post game or the next morning on ESPN. Everybody's talking point was, hey, I think it's finally time to give Sam. I think Chris Sims had a whole thing on Sunday Night Football. I think it's finally time that we give Sam Darnold his due, that he's actually a really high level coach. And like, it's kind of funny because all of them were like, hey, when's everybody else going to catch up? But all of them were doing it at the exact same time, on the exact same timeline. But yeah, I mean, just having these kinds of games where it's not just that the numbers that you're putting up are good, but doing it in circumstances that require you to be good. Yeah, that's gonna buy some fans across the national media.
Dude, I'm telling you, ESPN, NFL Network, Sports Center, Scott Van Pelt, Herm Edward, everybody. It's like all the Sam haters who maybe were on the fence all year that said back in like week 6, week 7, like, I can't trust him. I can't trust that. It's going to fall apart. Like that ending to that game with 4 minutes left, the way Sam Darnold closed that game out, I think you could just start to hear it in people's voices. Like these national pundits and experts were finally convinced this guy's got the goods and can be a quarterback who leads this team deep into the playoffs in combination with everything else that we've talked about leading up to this week too. A coach of the year candidate, probably going to win it. A phenomenal defense as well, which we'll tap into the defensive day. But they just check so many boxes of the prerequisites you need when you look at Super Bowl caliber teams every year. It feels
it's now shifted to where, and by the way, Darnold 15 TDs, 1 pick since the Jacksonville fiasco, and the pick was not even like a bad pick. It was a 4th down where he kind of had to throw the ball.
It was a YOLO ball on 4th down.
Yeah, not even a pick you hold against him. You're at the point now with the national media where if you don't extend Sam Darnold, now the Vikings are in a position where they're going to get crucified if they don't make that decision because everybody's now in his camp. And how can you not be after the following happens in the Seattle game? Like, can you put together a better sequence, a better, like, just show this drive to all prospective suitors on the market as a free agent, Sam Darnold, and you're going to get paid. The game-winning drive, Darnold gets hammered 3 times on the drive. The 1st and 15 play got smoked. Then on the face mask, gets smoked, twists his ankle, probably has like a low-grade ankle sprain, honestly. Stays in there. There's no headset communication.
That part was crazy to me. Yeah, it just went out.
Just makes the legend grow even more. Yeah.
KOC throwing a little shade. He's like, what a convenient time for the headset to go out. That's interesting. We had to run for a new battery on the sideline. Meanwhile, Darnold doesn't ease into anything after the ankle sprain, climbs the pocket, gets sandwiched, and delivers a 40. You know what? That is one of the best throws. Are you
just saying that because that you needed that to hit your over?
Okay, well, we'll get to that. That was
an
huge for me on a
emotional
personal,
part of the equation in there.
What a comeback victory for Sam.
Greatest throw in NFL history all time.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the Brett Favre to Greg Lewis throw. Like a 40-yard dart with so much velocity, so much accuracy to it, because that thing had to be back shoulder.
It had to be where it was. It had to arrive when it did, which is a very difficult thing to do given how far away it was. Yeah, like every element of that makes that a really high quality throw was absolutely present there. And it was like, credit to Jefferson, obviously greatest receiver in the NFL right now. He did a lot to get open against double coverage. It was the throw, right? Which is always like fun to say. It's like, hey, Jefferson did a good job, but we got to start talking about this quarterback. That throw was same as the game-winning throw. It was outstanding.
And to your point here a little bit, Sam, and I know we're going to spend, literally all offseason on, all right, should they sign Sam Darnold or not? And it's funny for us, we've kind of already been talking about this the last few weeks, a little bit here or there. But again, now that, everything unfolded the way it did, and now the national media is kind of pointing that direction, like Sam Darnold was the 3rd overall pick for a reason. And yes, the highlights were pretty scarce in New York, but you could pull out about 2.5 minutes of highlights in his 4 years of New York. But like there was some wow plays in there as well. Like again, he was the 3rd overall pick for a reason. KOC obviously has a lot to do with this. He's got phenomenal weapons, which we know, but some of this is Sam Darnold just being really good. Like again, that 4-minute drive that he had yesterday, you kind of saw everything, the total package, right? The toughness, okay, the cliche toughness you talked about, the ankle. Don't forget that pinky was wrapped all week too, Sam. Got the rain falling, no headset, but like the improv skills. Remember, he scrambled for about 10, 11 yards and met up with KOC on the sideline actually to drop or talk about that next play in which he hit JJ. But just everything that you want. Again, checked a lot of boxes as well. And I think people are finally seeing the guy that they thought they were getting when this guy was drafted 3rd overall coming out of USC. But total package yesterday for sure.
Yeah, incredible. And that 4-minute drive was so quick, so efficient that Seattle got the ball 2 more times.
I was worried. I was like,
not once, 2 more times.
What was really kind of confusing to me about it was the broadcast was like on board of how quickly the Vikings were moving. It was like, good job, he got out of bounds. But there was like 4 minutes left. Why? Maybe good job, he got out of bounds.
Yeah, it happened like twice, Mark Sanchez.
Come on, Sanchez.
Yeah. It was like because Sam Darnold scrambled out of bounds. Great scramble. Jefferson ran out of bounds to the crosser, and they're like, yeah, good job, he got out of bounds. And they were like, yeah, the Vikings can't really run the ball here. And I was like, it's like 4 minutes left. Like, you want to run the ball here? Again, the Vikings won. I'm not upset with what the Vikings did. I was just very confused about the way the broadcast handled the conversation about time management. It was just like, yeah, no, there's like, I see why the Vikings were doing this because scoring is just good. And if you can do that better, faster, you probably should do that. But like, you got to at least have the conversation, right? It was so weird.
Yeah. I very much expected them to have to engineer another game-winning field goal drive.
Yeah.
And I was expecting...
Yeah, how many times have we been here? Right. And usually it's your favorite quarterback, Russell Wilson, who's doing this. But like, you put them in this deficit and they've got their own game-winning drive that they're going to engineer here. Oh, look at that graphic of Geno, Sam, and Mark Sanchez. Yeah, I was wondering what they were talking about after the game, too. I was like, do you think they brought up the whole... like, hey, did you have an edge rusher punch you in the jaw? No, that's crazy. No,
man.
Production meeting.
Yeah. But yeah, like I fully expected because Geno Smith has a couple of game-winning drives under his belt in Seattle as well. I fully expected the Vikings to have to like win that back, and I was like, great, this is just like the first step to like the 2-step process. And I thought the second step was scoring again, not stopping them from scoring, which I'm also comfortable with. Glad you did that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Van Ginkel sack, right? Like, if without that second
Van Ginkel's fourth quarter. Oh, my God.
Van Ginkel went off. Yeah. How about, obviously, I mean, the A topic is the 4-minute drive, the game-winning drive. But how about the opening drive, too? I brought that up on the postcast. Sam Darnold, 7 of 8 for 80 yards and a touchdown. And props to KOC for going for that 4th down too. That kind of felt like set the tone. That was a big call. That was kind of
very ambiguous. One, like 4th and 6th or something like that.
Yeah. Kind of set an aggressive tone for the team, I thought, and a great play design too. It was like Naylor got a little rub route and kind of freed up Hawkinson, makes the tiptoe grab on the sideline. Also, Darnold in the red zone. Vikings had 5 snaps in the red zone yesterday. One of them was a rush for 0 yards. Okay, the other 4 plays, Darnold went 4 for 4. 2 of them were 3rd down conversions. The other 2 were touchdowns. So a massive day for Darnold in the red zone too. And obviously a game like this on the road, again, everything that you laid out, Sam, against a team who desperately needs to win in their building, tough conditions. I mean, those red zone plays are definitely the difference between winning and losing some of these games as well. So great day by Darnold. Not just the last drive, though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was a couple you want back, maybe. I mean, on the whole, unbelievable considering the environment, the team you're facing, playing with desperation. Had a lot of pressure in his face throughout the day. We can talk more about that. He delivered 3 TDs, passer rating over 100 for the 12th time in 15 games this year. KOC called that out. Very, very impressive stuff.
And over 110 the 8th time this year. He's not just scraping by on some of these.
Right, that's even more impressive. Just real quick, Sam, you said, okay, maybe a couple that he wanted back. People are going to look in the stat sheet and say, they kind of stalled out a couple times and didn't convert on some 3rd downs. Hawkinson, I'm not going to say both catches were tough. But on 3rd down, Hawkinson did drop 2 catchable balls.
Addison with the worst one, arguably, in the first quarter, I think.
Addison dropped one. Hawkinson had the tight window throw that was perfectly placed that he couldn't reel in. I don't know if I'd want to call that necessarily a drop. Naylor, I think that one was on 3rd down as well. I don't know that was... I would probably call that a drop, but it was also contested, right? Mm-hmm. There were a lot of I think Sam Darnold was 75% on accurately aimed throws or something like that. And he did get bailed out twice or so on inaccurate throws that turned into receptions. I know Jefferson had one early in the game that the broadcast called out. So I don't want to say it was perfect or anything like that, but 75% on accuracy, suffering from contested catch losses and drops. He has I think it was an NFL Next Gen Stats said a -4 in completion percent over expected when you account for, how close the defenders were and how far downfield stuff was. And his EPA per play was in the 75th percentile, was plus 0.24. Mm-hmm. So obviously the results were fine no matter how many of those passes he ended up completing or having dropped, but he played better than I think a lot of these numbers typically show. And that was, and he, again, made some stupid mistakes. He always does, but he always makes up for them. It seems it's really cool. Again, aside from the Jaguars game, he seems to be making up for a lot of these mistakes in enormous ways.
Mm-hmm. Incredible day of missed opportunities, getting for the Vikings in particular, getting your hands on the football and not reeling it in could have doomed them in this game. Whether it's the wide receivers, the tight ends not reeling in contested catches or balls that are right in their hands. Defensive players dropping interceptions. That the Griffin miss cost him 3 points.
Yeah, the Cashman one.
If Cashman catches it, who knows if he scores?
Did that get tipped and just maybe affect the depth perception? Right, he thought it was coming at a certain velocity, and maybe it came a little bit later or something because that. I'm scratching and clawing trying to find an excuse how you dropped that one. I know you're a linebacker, bud, but come on now. How about Will the Thrill? Can we just spend 30 seconds on Will the Thrill? You win by 3 points. A rookie, a 52-yarder and a 48-yarder. Again, coldy, windy, rainy, all the elements. Rookie on the road, 3 for 3. What? 3 for 3. Extra points. One of them was a 48-yarder. If I missed it.
Jefferson, it was the Jefferson taunting on his celebration because when he was doing the grid, he was looking at the defender.
I saw the penalty. I had to go let the dog out. I missed it, but then I looked afterwards and I'm like, oh, he hit a 48-yard extra pointer as well. So Vikes win by 3. Special teams. I think Luke shouted out Ryan Wright yesterday in the postcast as well. He had a great day, but special teams, to go on the road in the NFL, sometimes you need all 3 phases to show up, and offense, defense, special teams showed up in a big way yesterday too.
Luke Braun was convinced that the Jefferson gritty had a disgusting act by Justin Jefferson. Like there was an obscene gesture in that gritty.
Somewhere in there? Really?
I'm not, yeah, and maybe that's true. I'm just not convinced that the officials are like with pop culture enough to understand what maybe they were seeing. I think Arif's correct. I think it was targeted at Witherspoon. And I think that's the explanation that KOC got as well. So I think they might have missed on whatever subtext there was in the gritty itself.
I would love for Sam to explain, like, break down any NFL players' pop culture references for us on the show. I would really appreciate that, Sam, if you could do that in the future.
Okay, well, let's get some production together. We'll make a segment out of it, and I will embarrass myself for the entertainment of the masses. When we return, we dig in a little deeper to the Vikings defense, not just for this game, but kind of this latest stretch of the defense. We'll have a conversation about where they're at as we head into the final stages of the year, plus nerdy stats coming up, Week 16 bet results, all that and more on the Minnesota Football Party. We are presented today by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, and it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with this new offer, $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's an amazing offer. Take advantage if you're new to FanDuel. Bet 5, get $250. You can bet before the game. You can bet during the game with live wagering options. Dozens and dozens of prop bets available. They drop about a couple days before the game. You got 48 hours to think about it. And you can do the first touchdown score. You can do anytime touchdown score or last touchdown score. So many ways to wager on the NFL, NBA, college basketball, college football playoff, also available as well. FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Game time.
Game time. And hammer that subscribe button. We'd appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, also get us on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed and check out the Ron Johnson show tomorrow on Locked On Sports Minnesota, Christmas Eve edition. All right. Vikings defense. Luke Braun, again, absent today. Where are you, Luke? Come on. Luke Braun was freaking out about the defense on Twitter. He addressed that a little bit in the postcast. And I made this point, like, I, too, have my moments during the games where I say this defense is just so loose. And it's such a dichotomy. And Arif, you pointed this out on Twitter, too. Like, they get carved up, hot knife through butter on that first touchdown drive, but they don't allow a first down on 4 of the first 5 Seahawks possessions. And then suddenly the Seahawks are going 5 plays, 88 yards for a touchdown. Very feast or famine. But, like, you give up the yardage, and you give up some very easy-looking touchdown drives. And this has happened a number of times where at the end of the day, you say, man, the defense seemed kind of vulnerable, but man, they gave up 21 against the Falcons, 22 against the Cardinals, 24 against the Seahawks. These are not terrible totals because you take the ball away enough, you make enough plays, and you're good enough in the red zone typically where the end result is not all that bad. And the stat that stands out to me, Arif, scoring percentage against, best in the NFL. So the percentage of drives that end in a score, best in the NFL. I mean, that tells you something, right? Like this defense does enough on a consistent basis to get the job done.
Yeah, I think that the things that stand out, and I think the reason it feels like this defense is never living up to its reputation, even though at the end of the day, the numbers are good. Like there's been a number of games where when I've written like the summary, right? It's like, oh, they did this against, the Jacksonville offense, right? And people are like, well, you're supposed to hold Jacksonville down to 12 points. And it's like, really? Because the Vikings are the only team that did actually hold Jacksonville, that kind of thing, where it's not only that they're, doing a great job against these teams in the aggregate. They're also, when you compare those teams primarily to what they've done for the rest of the year, the Vikings are number 1, 2, and 3. In fact, I think out of the 15 games they've had, the Vikings have had a top 3 performance against the opposing offense for those offenses in 10 of the 15 games. Like the Vikings are destroying teams relative to their own expectations. Yet when we watch these games, we're always uncomfortable. And I think that there's 2 reasons for that. I think the first is that the Vikings do not seem to be very good at 2-minute defense. They just don't. like especially at the end of halves, but like also at the end of games. It feels like some of those they're giving up kind of on purpose to like drain the clock, and that's turning a 2-score game into a fake 1-score game. We've talked about that a couple of times in this podcast. But some of it is just like, hey, button up, right? Like tighten up. So like the 2-minute stuff is something that they need to work on. And if you recall Brian Flores from Miami, that was an issue, right? Like in Miami, the 2-minute defense. So that's part of it, is that in these higher leverage moments where we think you got to get it here, that's when the defense disappoints. And that, I think, sticks in our mind a little bit more, forgetting the fact that on the 4 drives prior to this 2-minute drill or whatever, they'd shut this team out, forced an interception, forced a punt, whatever. I think the other thing is it's just easier to remember because it's a feast or famine defense, because you're either allowing like 5 first downs on a drive or none. It's easier to remember getting carved up on those 5 than it is to remember the 3 and out. Like, I think it first of all, there's more plays in that situation, so you're going to remember it a little bit more. But second, I think it takes a lot of 3 and outs before you think this is a 3 and out team, right? Because every offense is going to have one, so you have to see more of it. But when someone drives down the field, that's so memorable and it hurts, and you kind of remember the pain a little bit more. So I think that those are like the primary reasons that we're uncomfortable with the fact that this is the best defense in the NFL, because it doesn't feel like it a lot of the time.
Yeah. Luke, let me tee you up with this. And as Kale Chips points out, they've been Mike Zimmer good on third downs recently. They're second in the league in opponent third down percentage, 33.7%. Only Detroit is better. And I think that's the key, right? Like, if you look at Seattle's touchdown drives, I don't know if they had a third down. I mean, the teams that beat the Vikings just have a ton of success on first and second down. The Lions did it. The Rams did it. They take their shots early. They don't get to third down. If teams get to third down against the Vikings, they're in some serious trouble. Seattle was yesterday. So take it away from there. I mean, they're good on the weighty downs, right?
Yeah, they're great at the weighty downs, but I also wonder, we've all seen these graphics, right, this year, as far as like how much Brian Flores is blitzing on the early downs compared to the rest of the league. It's like twice as much as the rest of the league, and then he dials it back on third down. It's still a high rate compared to the rest of the league, but you just don't know what's coming. So I wonder if teams maybe, at least throughout the week, have to at least have a conversation about that. Like, maybe the best time to attack them, let's not run into these blitzes on first and second down. That's the time to maybe go take some shots. And I just think the way the defense is built, I mean, it's just in their DNA to give up these chunk plays, right? Like, we talked about that at the beginning of the season after what we saw last year. Like, that's just part of it that you got to live with. When you sign up to be this aggressive, blitzing Brian Flores defense, you got to take the big plays with the good and vice versa. So, yeah, like the middle of the field stuff specifically, dagger, right? We all remember Luke after the Lions game, losing his mind about the dagger stuff from the Detroit game. Teams can chew them up in between the hashes. They can connect on some chunk plays, but you get down to the red zone like we saw in the Cardinals game, all of a sudden that 15 to 20 yard middle of the stuff field isn't there anymore, right? Like, everything shrinks down, and they've done a really good job, especially as of late, clamping down in the red zone. Again, that Cardinals game was fantastic. I want to say they were 1 for 6. They were lights out in the red zone. So red zone defense has been pretty good. Their ability to pressure and confuse not just the quarterback but the offensive line for 4 straight quarters just wears teams down by the end. And then, the run defense too, and the takeaways. We brought that up on the postcast. Only team in the league with a takeaway in every single game this season. So, yeah. I mean, credit Flores for being so aggressive with a lot of those blitzes on first and second down and being able to use that to help stop the run game at the same time, like blitzing into some of those run fits. Because teams get behind the sticks, like the Mike Zimmer defense. You get them in 3rd and 7 or longer, and we all know what a huge difference that can make as far as how aggressive you can be as a coordinator and a play caller. So, yes, chunk plays, middle of the field stuff. I agree with Arif. The 2-minute defense needs some cleaning up and has some tightening to do. Every game, it feels like, especially versus a good offense, right, like a capable offense, there's a drive or two that's just like, that looked way too easy. What just happened? Don't blink. All of a sudden, they're down in the red zone and putting up a touchdown. But to give up that kind of stuff and get everything else that we've seen this year in return with the turnovers, the red zone defense, the run stopping, the quarterback pressures. Obviously, the proof's in the pudding. The stats is pretty evident that you're going to take that all day long for sure.
I've got a nerdy stat to play off of this about a shift in their blitz approach. Nerdy stat of the day.
Analytics fans rejoice. Woo-hoo-hoo! It's time to get educated.
Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
With the nerdy stat of the day.
The Vikings have blitzed opposing quarterbacks per PFF over 60% of the time in each of the last 4 games. So that would be Kyler, Cousins, Caleb Williams, and now who'd we play yesterday? Geno. Thank you.
Excellent work.
Great research.
Professional podcast.
Great memory. Great mind like a steel trap up here. The Vikings did not blitz any quarterbacks over 60% in the first 11 games, and now they've done it 4 times in a row. Arif, tell me what that means, and is it yielding the results you want? Because if you look, the defensive performance last 4 weeks, like I think 3 of the 4 negative expected points, and you know who's gotten quiet? Jonathan Grenard to some extent. Obviously he won you the Cardinals game, right, on that final drive. Like that was his moment of the last month. Hasn't been as active aside from that. Only 9 pressures in the month of December.
Can I just say real quick, though, he had a huge tackle for loss yesterday. Seattle converted that fake punt. Then we get flagged for 12 men on the field. It's 1st and 5. Next play, Grenard swallows up Kenny Walker for like a 6-yard loss on a screen pass. That set up the first Van Ginkel sack, and then 2 plays later they had to punt. So, I agree with you, though, Sam. Yes, been a little bit more quiet as of late. Van Ginkel, big day yesterday, but Grenard came up huge late in that game as well.
Huge. He's a great run defender. I will give him that.
He's a phenomenal run defender. I will say this, though. Grenard's pressure numbers are still quite good. I think that there was one game in the last 5 where his pressure numbers weren't great. I think he actually had 0. But overall, his pressure numbers have been quite good over the past 5 games. And so I think it's just the way that a lot of this stuff works out is that when you design rush plans that are supposed to enable particular pass rushers, which very often can be, Van Ginkel or Metellus or whoever's on the edge, and Grenard can take a guy on the inside. Sometimes that'll happen. But no, I think that there's a couple of things here. So where did that blitz statistic come from, Sam?
That's a PFF blitz rate.
Yeah, and that makes sense because PFF, their blitz rate numbers are a little bit higher than, say, like, Sport Radar's blitz rate numbers, right? Yeah. I find it interesting because I think that there's a couple of things at play here. One is who's doing the counting, but 2, the Vikings have not been on 3rd down as often in some of these games, and they blitz more on 1st and 2nd down. I think we're seeing a couple more 1st and 2nd, they've been on 3rd down more often. Sorry, is the other way around. They've been on 3rd down more often, and they don't blitz as often on 3rd down as they do on 1st and 2nd down. And so when you compare the 1st and 2nd down and 3rd down rates, it may even out. But I do think that the higher blitz rate in general the past couple of games, it does remind me a lot of the stuff that we saw last year when we saw like some outstanding 60%. I know that for most of the season, the Vikings were 1st or 2nd with Denver of all teams in blitz rate because they were hovering around 42, 48%, somewhere around there. But I think that some of it is just like, this is where you live. This is how you design your coverage plans. This is how you design your fronts. This is what the Vikings defense is built off of. How people say you got to like run to set up play action, and maybe you don't, but you're supposed to be pretty good at least simulating what a run looks like in order for play action. I think the Vikings have to blitz to set up their non-blitz. I think that the way that their coverage plans look is they always have to be able to threaten the blitz, and sometimes that means blitzing a lot. And so I think that like a lot of that comes from the Vikings just being like, we live here now, right? Quarterbacks that do well against the blitz don't necessarily do well against the Vikings blitz. And so it is kind of a unique set of statistics to break down. This also has meant that quarterbacks who are bad against the blitz sometimes are good against the Vikings specific blitz. So you always have to kind of adjust. One final thing is that also it very much seems like the Vikings adjust their game plan every couple of drives, which I think is also one reason that they're feast or famine, is that They're like, oh, we got carved up on this drive. This is how they did it. This is how we're going to adjust it. And I think that that's part of it too, is that some of these adjustments have dialed up the pressure.
Inman, either thoughts on that or your own nerdy stat? What do you got?
Did you guys see Brett Coleman on X, his nerdy stat about the Vikings defense when Blake Cashman plays? Yeah. And we knew that, Sam. You and I really kind of pounded that home after the Lions and Rams losses, right? Like, man, we can't wait to see what this is. This a Blake Cashman thing? And sure enough, Blake Cashman comes back, and he just missed those 2 games, correct? The only 2 games the Vikings lost are the 2 games Blake Cashman was out. Is that correct? I'm about 80% sure on that.
Missed one more.
Did he miss one more, though?
So 12-0 when he plays and 1-2 when he doesn't, I think.
Oh, okay. Cashman, when he's in, defense, first in EPA per play allowed, third in success rate allowed, first in the NFL in conversion rate allowed. When he's out, 27th in EPA, so it goes from first to 27th. 14th in success rate, so it goes from 3rd to 14th, and it goes from first in conversion rate to when Blake Cashman's out to 30th in the league in conversion rate. So that's pretty wild. I got one other one. It's not very nerdy. I brought up that Jonathan Grenard tackle for loss against Kenny Walker late in that game. That is his career high in tackles for loss. That was number 16. That's a career high for him. Last year in Houston, he had 15.
Nice.
I would say, so obviously I think Cashman is really important to the defense in ways that are always difficult to directly measure, right? And I think that we see that on the statistic that Coleman provides. And also just, it felt different, right? When the Vikings were trying to deal without him. So I'll say that, like, I want to just say Blake Cashman is a huge positive on the defense every single time.
But small sample though, too. And it gets two good offenses as well. Lions.
For sure. I will also say, and the fact that the Lions and the Rams are in there really complicates the sample. I will say on top of that, individually, when we're not talking about his impact on the way that other players play, which seems to be real, individually, this was not one of his best games, in my opinion, despite having a high tackle total in this particular game. He missed a couple of tackles, including a really critical one on 3rd down that we all remember from, moving across, getting up the field. And it's like, you gotta tackle Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? That guy is, he's not actually that small. He's 6 feet tall. But
unless it's Lockett rolling for a first down, because you may have needed him to roll
another 3 yards a reach.
If Lockett had a little bit less awareness of where the down marker was, that probably would have been better for me. So he missed a couple of tackles. He missed one in the run game. He also had a nice tackle for loss. So I don't want to say it was all bad. I want to say that it was pretty up and down, and he gave up 80 yards in coverage.
Agreed. Not his best game by any means. Agreed.
Yeah, but that's not to say, right, that he's not been a huge asset to this defense. I think that this was one of the better. I mean, in an offseason of incredible pickups like Sam Darnold and Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman, one of the better pickups, which is a tough bar to clear this year, given how good they've been.
100%. One more.
I just want to throw
this out. Go ahead.
James is wondering if it's the healthiest we've been in how many weeks in this Packers game. And pardon me, I would say when was the last time they had their entire starting lineup on the field? Because 4 games without Pace. Prior to that, were you missing anybody? Maybe that'll overlap with Cashman. I'm not sure how many times you've had the full 11 on the field. So it's only happened a handful of times. And you get back to how they performed in the early season, where this defense was probably at an even higher level than they've been recently. Maybe you can tap back into that with the full 11.
Yeah, and I will say, too, it's like when Cashman was out, it just felt like, we're just missing Cashman. Then it turned into Pace for 4 or 5 weeks. Still waiting for him to return. But yesterday was the first time we've watched this defense, and it felt like we were looking at new numbers, new faces, new players out there, a mixture of them, like a handful of them for the majority of the game. Obviously, Theo Jackson replacing Harrison Smith, but Bobby McCain, Dwight McGlothern was in there, Levi Drake Rodriguez was in there. So there was a lot of new names, probably the most on defense that we've seen all year. And the fact that they held up for the most part pretty good needs to be taken into the equation. I was just going to read Arif this Macho Meach stat that he ripped out on the postcast yesterday and get his 2 cents, because the Vikings have by far the best penalty plus minus in the league, more than double the second place team, the Chiefs. So
yeah,
you saw it again yesterday. Seahawks.
A version of this. Someone tweeted out, and they were mad because they were an Eagles fan, and they tweeted out an image about like net penalty yards or something like that. And the Eagles were like near the bottom of net penalty yards. Also, did Luke Inman freeze? I can't tell. Looks like he has. Great job.
He's just stoic.
And it's really fantastic. You know, Luke is traditionally just, he doesn't really emotionally react to stuff, so that makes sense. But the thing that I had noticed, obviously, was that the Vikings were at the top of this. And my actual first thought was, that's a Justin Jefferson stat, right? That, you know, he keeps on drawing, because he's drawn 154 yards in defensive pass interference, plus another 15 to 20 yards in other kinds of penalties. And so 170 of like the 400 penalty yards that the Vikings have benefited from just come from that. You take that away, the Vikings are actually still near the top, but they're nowhere, like they're not like clearing the pack like they are. So that's part of it, right? Is that you have a player so talented that he's drawing these additional penalties. Part of it is that, you know, the members of the offensive line that are most likely to get penalized, the offensive tackles, which are the ones the refs can most easily see, are really highly skilled. They were until at least the Christian Darrisaw injury, right? And I think that that's part of it too, is that, you know, the people that are causing a lot of penalties for a lot of other teams, like your Jawan Taylors or Orlando Browns or Ronnie Stanleys, the Vikings offensive tackles just don't do that. So I think once you kind of clear that area, right, of like some explanations for it, then I think you can get into some of the coaching explanations, which are the Vikings are a little bit more disciplined, which are that, you know, the Vikings, you know, kind of drill the things that they need to drill, that they prepare for away games a little bit better. I think some of that is true, but I think a lot of it is just that the Vikings have individual players who have unique talents related to this penalty production thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've got a good question from one of our commenters. I don't want a lot of thought on this. I just want you to react. If you could only have Darnold or Flores back next year, who would you?
This is a great question.
Pick?
This is a
great question.
Darnold or Flores?
Flores.
For me, it's Flores.
I'm so scared to. I don't want to find out what this defense looks like next year without Brian Flores. Obviously, it hurts to say, okay, go ahead, Sam Darnold, you got to walk. But knowing that you have J.J. McCarthy, right, knowing he's on a rookie contract, and knowing that a great defense can help a young quarterback, I want Brian Flores back over Sam Darnold. Great question, though. I wouldn't be mad at anybody for picking Sam Darnold, but for me, it's Brian Flores and that defense.
Yeah, it helps when it counts 0 against the cap. I do think, though, that they've known the whole time that Brian Flores is likely a goner at some point. He wants to advance and be a head coach.
I'm still holding out hope we get one more year, though.
Totally could happen. Totally could be back. I think it's maybe more likely
eventually.
than not.
Yeah,
like 60-40. I think, though, that he's been grooming Durante Jones. I think Durante Jones has a great chance to carry on the Flores scheme.
I hope so.
But can you do it in the...
You sound so despondent. I hope so.
But you're right. You're right. When
Ed Donatel? No, this guy sounds great.
How many teams have tried to carry on a scheme with someone else and it doesn't work as well, right? So you do lose something there. Okay, one more quick one, just gut reaction. Macho Meech, what opponent would you least like to face in the playoffs? Let's just say first round or first game, if you will.
Right, so which would probably exclude the Lions, right? We can't.
Well, it's possible that you would meet the Lions. You would host the Lions in the divisional round,
right?
If they were a 5 and you were a 1. So let's say from the one perspective, is that sort of the nightmare scenario that you beat the Lions week 18 and then get them again 2 weeks later?
Yeah, I think the Lions are the ones I'd least like to face, which I mean, it's almost a coward's answer, right? Like, oh, the best team. But I think that the Lions specifically have like a unique advantage against the way that the Vikings set up their defense, right? And so that's like, you know, how the Vikings have won half their games. So that one concerns me the most. I actually would not put the Eagles second because first, they seem like they're a team just like ready to implode. I don't know when it's going to be. But
starts with the head coach, right? I just don't believe in that head coach.
But I think that given that Jalen Hurts has a specific weakness against the blitz, that feels like it's going to be an easier matchup for the Vikings than it would be for most teams. So there's that. Emotional hedging perspective, I kind of just don't want the Packers because I don't want to like deal with Packers fans a little bit. That's part of it. But that's kind of an aside. I'm trying to think who's second on the list. Who's second on your list?
Yeah, Lions for sure, number one. I mean, Washington, I guess people could be in there, but they don't, worry me too much. As far as teams I would love to play right away, Michael Penix in Atlanta. I mean, the Bucks don't really do much for me, to be totally honest. Maybe I'm underselling them a little bit, but those are
after
the
what
two
we
teams.
just saw?
Right. I mean, after, going, even if it's like, oh, we're the 5 seed, we got to go on the road. Okay, do we get to go to Atlanta versus a rookie quarterback in a dome, the team that we just whooped up on, or Tampa on the road? It just doesn't really do much for me.
PHTNVL makes the point that it's probably the Rams, and I think out of all of the teams that populate the rest of the NFC like division leaders, I think maybe it's kind of weird because the Rams don't have an amazing record or anything like that. Yeah. But to me, it's like 1 the Lions, maybe it's 2 the Rams, 3 the Packers, and then 4 the Eagles, because you're right, the Buccaneers, the Falcons.
Yeah.
I don't know. The Commanders do concern me.
Yeah, especially yesterday, man. But again, rookie quarterback. Again, this guy is not playing like a rookie. He's not acting like a rookie at all. But rookies get into the playoffs.
Maybe I take the Commanders above. I think I take the Commanders above the Packers and Eagles. Actually.
Well, let's think about this from a first. So if you're the 1 seed, right, you're hosting the lowest seed in the divisional round. So that would be either Lions, Packers, or Commanders. And out of those 3, I think you definitely want the Commanders. Like you want the Commanders.
I don't know. I might go for the Packers. I might take the Packers.
Yeah, at home. Is it at home?
Well, you'd be hosting. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd want Green Bay over a rookie QB.
I don't know. Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. Like I respect what the Commanders, which is crazy. I never thought I'd say this. I respect what the Commanders have done both on offense and defense. I think it's kind of difficult to figure out what necessarily they're doing. And I think the unique challenges presented by Jaden Daniels are actually a little bit more concerning than the challenges presented by Jordan Love.
Unless we beat the Packers, though, because you can't go in undefeated and then the playoffs, because nobody ever wins that 3rd game in a row.
Ever. It's just hard to.
I hate having to beat both of those teams and potentially face both of them again.
I thought we did this, man.
Right. Yeah, we just did this.
But I don't know. It's Jaden maybe it's because I've like made a little bit of a bit of disrespecting Jordan Love. Maybe I'm just doing it too much here. But Jaden Daniels scares me. Like after he recovered from his injury and refigured things out, he has been on a tear again. So I don't know.
Yeah, he's
will Toyotathon be over by the time? Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah, I think by then Toyotathon will be over. So
what's one of the most impressive thing for me is okay, you draft Jaden number 2 overall. Obviously, you're drafted number 2, so you got a lot of holes. But okay, you got Scary Terry, but in this league, you need more than one guy. And for him to succeed and put up the numbers he's put up, over 70% completion percentage for most of this rookie year, plus what he does on the ground. The O-line's not great. Brian Robinson's been injured. Who is number weapon 2, 3, and 4? Zach Ertz? He's really put the team on their back, the offense on their back anyways. And he's been super impressive for sure.
Didn't he throw a handful of picks yesterday too, though? They had 5 turnovers.
Well, he was in do or die mode, and I know he threw one late. They went on 3rd down. It was 3rd and long, and it's okay, we're do or die. We got to throw it up. But that was a bad interception. They had 4 turnovers.
2 picks yesterday.
2 picks. Okay, yeah. And give Philly's secondary some credit, or that defense. That Philly defense has been playing lights out right now too.
We'll update our Week 16 bets and continue with a little Packers talk on the Minnesota Football Party. Brought to you today by Prize Picks. It's the best way to play daily fantasy sports. If you love watching the game, you love Prize Picks. It's easy. It's exciting. Couple of clicks. You've got an entry together. Take more than, less than, and 2 to 6 player stats. And you've just added a lot to your football watching experience. You can cash in 1,000 times your money at Prize Picks during this holiday season. It's Picksmas at Prize Picks. They're offering 2 free picks in December as well. When your picks hit, they cash it out quickly in 15 minutes or less. So check out those Vikings-Packers possibilities. You've got Sam Darnold passing yards, Jordan Love passing yards. I like the over-under or the more than, less than 0.5 touchdowns scored. You can get in the action there at Prize Picks. Prize Picks app. Join today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. These were the bets from last week. Now, remember where we were at in our betting contest. Started with 1,000 mythical dollars. I had zeroed out. I was down 1,000 in last. I laid 1,000 on the Chargers spread last Thursday.
A Thursday night football game.
Woo! What a trip. Down 11 at one point. They come back and win actually handily in the end. To give me a win. So that got me back on level footing. And I added Justin Jefferson with a 30-plus yard catch.
Which his long heading into that final drive was like 19, right? Like there weren't many.
So he had a 27 yarder where he stumbled and caught it. If he'd caught it and kept running, it would have been 30 easy. But he stumbled and fell.
Okay.
And I thought that was it. I thought that was my chance.
Yeah,
and then
he got to like 105, and you're like, all right,
it's over. They're not gonna. Yeah, like they've only got 39 yards of field here. How am I gonna get a 30-yard play? Oh, yes. So that was big for me. So I am back ahead of Luke Braun. I'm at 1,053 again.
Just
the
like
loser has to host draft coverage all day on day 3 of the draft.
This kind of reminds me, Sam, of there was a team this year. Oh yeah, the Bears, when they had an improbable comeback only to lose.
Oh no, not going to be me. I'm better at avoiding sacks than Caleb Williams. Luke Braun
Sam ain't going to be punted much this year. Okay, he's just not.
Sam drafted Torrey Taylor for a reason. All right,
right.
Braun 1-1. He's in desperation mode now. He's about 150 down. He did sneak by with an Aaron Jones over on rushing yards with his final 2 carries, I believe.
It's stuck at 64 for like 15 minutes.
Dude,
it was
seriously.
at 64 and a half.
Yeah.
It was just
he had like 52 at halftime, and then it was just sitting at 64 for like the entire third and most of the fourth quarter.
It's like, what is going on?
And that happened to me versus the Rams game. That Rams game, he was looking great, and then the final fourth quarter, he didn't touch the ball more than 2-3 times.
All of these props came down to the very end. It was a great day.
Yeah, I had Tyler Lockett over, I think it was 21 and a half, right? So I needed 22 yards from him. And when he caught that second pass and just started like army crawling forward, I was like, God, you got to get up and run, dude. What are you doing?
Come on.
19 yards. 19 yards. His lowest in like 6 games. 19 yards.
Needed 4 more. So Arif goes 0-1. You pushed on the Vikings
-3.
push on the Vikings.
Yeah, that was funny. And
Inman clinched it. I mean, Inman's got this thing just about in the bag. He's at 2,300 to the positive.
He bet on another 1 to 6 point win.
It's a disease, dude. I'm addicted. They're in close games. They keep winning. Like, why would I not? That plus 300 value. They're giving money away. God. It's crazy.
Macho Me just pulling out some lore. It's funny how Inman is winning despite never betting once on the Jags.
Oh, man. I should go back to the Jags. Maybe the final week of the year. If I got it, for old time's sake. If I got everything bowed up. I missed you.
3. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's a battle now. I mean, Inman is free and clear. I think, I hate this cough. Arif, Braun, and myself are battling.
I hate this.
With 2 weeks to go.
I thought we were in the clear, and then you do this moonshot.
Yeah. But again, one big bet.
The Chargers game was like flirting outside of that range for what looked like most of the game until the very end. We're like, yeah, we'll win by exactly 3. It's good.
There was a significant 2-point conversion, and I know in the end they did score again, but that tipped ball to convert the 2 and go up by 3 in the fourth quarter was insane.
Yeah.
Gigantic swing. So
funny the specific plays we remember when we've got a little extra incentive,
a little
on
investment,
these games, isn't it?
I was a little annoyed that the Vikings, that Theo Jackson didn't wait like 3 more plays to get that pick, because I was confident Tyler Lockett.
Oh, he would have. Yeah, he would have got a garbage one for sure. Yeah, it was coming.
Yeah. How about DK running the wrong route? and Geno getting mad. That was interesting at the
Great.
end.
That's leadership, Sam.
It was pretty fun to beat the trash talking team. Like Witherspoon and Metcalf were
So
very
chippy. Oh my god.
vociferous.
Chippy.
Haven't seen that all year, I would say, from an opponent. It was intense.
Maybe they woke
Crowd
up a
was
little
into
beast. Maybe they woke up the beast.
I think if the Bears were good, we would have seen more chippiness from like DJ Moore, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
From like Tyreek Stevenson doing skull chants.
Yeah. There's a very chippy team, but it's just like they kind of have to back it up before they have the confidence to, which I understand. But no, the Seahawks, they're just in it to fight, which I also kind of respect that a little bit. That's been like the DNA of that franchise since 2011. But I was like shocked. I was like, DK, you're having like a bad year. Why are you getting all these fights? You had a good game, but still, what are you doing?
Of course, I called out his contested catch rate being bad last week,
then he's,
and
like,
he made a couple
yeah.
awesome ones. Yeah. They've got talent over there. I mean, that's a good team with good. I don't know about the coaching. Really good
bones.
talent.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'd feel. Like, how would you feel about Geno Smith if you're a Seahawks fan? And Arif, you're part of this community. How do you think they should feel? Because he throws up so many 50-50 balls. Like, is that your whole game? You just throw it up on the sideline and try to let him make plays?
He is an aggressive thrower. He's a deep ball thrower. That's a big part of the reason that they've been able to generate the comebacks that they've had with him as a quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. And I think one of the things that really stands out about him is how he's got the ability to kind of mitigate that offensive line. Because it's not that he gets rid of the ball quickly. It's that he gets rid of the ball right before it's a disaster consistently. And when you've got someone who doesn't know how to ride that line, like Sam Howell back there, it's like really obvious how bad that offensive line really is. So I think that Seahawks fans are appropriately and correctly happy about Geno Smith because of the things that he's able to do and what he's kind of had to overcome to generate the kind of offensive production that they've had. Because I think the Seahawks were kind of overperforming given that offensive line. But yeah, he's an aggressive thrower, which is really funny because you go all the way back to his draft profile, West Virginia, bunch of meshes and crossers and short screens and jet passes and
Pat White sitting behind him.
Yeah. It's stuff that's like 3 yards down the field, if that.
Yeah.
You're trying to see, can he read a defense kind of stuff? And now it's just like, he's gonna chuck it deep whenever he can if DK is down there. So I think part of that is just like trusting his guys, and maybe that's a little bit too much in terms of 50-50. But some of it is just like the only way this offense is going to work is if it's explosive, because if it's not, I'm going to get creamed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they killed the draft. Was it 2 or 3 years? They hit on 2 tackles: Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas.
Yeah, Abraham Lucas is lost it because of multiple injuries. But that was a great pick.
Yeah. But the interior, to your point, this year has just been an absolute mess for the most part. And he's done a really good job, to your point, balancing out and riding that wave. But that draft class with Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen, I might be meshing 2 drafts together, but that just goes to show just goes to show like they killed 2 drafts in a row,
because the
Russell
reason
Wilson
I
trade.
actually was surprised by the Witherspoon pick was because they already had Tariq Woolen on the roster, and he was UTSA. He was a 4th round pick, 6'4",
David Morgan,
4'4", 140, some crazy numbers, like the most athletic corner that we've seen in a long time.
Freak.
At 6'4". And then they're like, we got to get another corner. And they were right. I was wrong. But incredible stuff. Oh, Macho Meach. Play the sound. Vikings game moved to 4:30 slot.
That's a very late change. Yeah, let me get the sound. That's
going to say.
That is horrible news for me because I'm working at 4 o'clock. This sucks. But where's the sound? There it is. Yeah. Vikings moved up, and this is Macho Meach as the lone source until I can find it here on Twitter.
We trust Macho Meach.
That's true.
It has been moved to 3:25.
Yeah, that is late. Right. That is very late.
That's great.
But it also kind of made sense the whole time, didn't it?
There's a lot of implications for this game.
They weren't going to get the Sunday night football game flexed. Was Washington, Atlanta, I believe.
There is right. One person on Twitter, and it's not, I don't know if it's an official source. I'm seeing one person saying that Burkhardt and Brady are on the Cowboys-Eagles game still, despite the Vikings and Packers clearly being the bigger game. Maybe that's changing with this move, and we get the Tom Brady experience. on Sunday.
I don't want that kind of pressure. We already got the national pundits on our side now. I don't want that kind of pressure. Hey,
we're still, keep us on the Joe Davis, Greg Olsen game.
Yes. That's a great tandem. That's a great tandem. Shout out to Dallas Turner, highest PFF grade.
Great pick
on defense. Great pick. Did you guys pull the Leo gif of him go like when he was standing up at linebacker? Like, oh, Dallas Turner, he's standing up at linebacker. Look Dallas Turner standing up, and then he gets the pick. It was just great. It was just great. I love to see it.
For more on why Dallas Turner is actually playing really well this year, check out Wide Left Out Football. Luke Brown wrote a piece on that. Mind you, again, not super great at individual one-on-one pass rushes, which you would think is the most important part of his job, and maybe it is, but he's great at everything else, which is pretty nice.
Love that.
Well, I just want to, if anyone is listening to the St. Thomas St. Cloud State hockey game next Sunday afternoon, I might be blending some commentary. I might get a little crossed up.
Right.
Yeah, Lucas Wallen with the puck, and there's a play action by Darnold, touchdown. Gonna be a little bit of that going on.
A little hybrid going on.
Yeah. All right. Final thoughts on Packers week. Early look at Green Bay. It's a 1.5 point spread, which that's basically telling me that they view this game as either even or leaning a little Green Bay because you get the little bump being at home, but Green Bay is getting a lot of respect here with this line.
Packers are getting a lot of love nationally and in Vegas just in general. I know before this week of games, Packers had better odds to make it to the Super Bowl out of the NFC than the Vikings. I think they were plus 700. Vikings were plus 800. To be honest, so much has changed with the Packers from the first time the Vikings saw this team back in week 4 in Lambeau to now. I'm really going to be dialed in tonight to this Monday Night Football game. I wish it was versus a better opponent. It's versus the Saints. They're 14.5 point favorites, but I'm going to be dialed in because I'm just not currently at this moment, at this juncture, tapped in to what has made the Packers so good in so many people's eyes, especially, again, the national pundits. Obviously, I know Jordan Love's cooking. Josh Jacobs has been on a tear, and the defense has kicked things up a notch. But I'm looking forward to watching this Monday Night Football game and kind of do a little scouting, if you will.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, people will say, well, the Packers smoked the Seahawks and the Vikings narrowly snuck by. The Seahawks had Sam Howell for almost half that game. So let's be honest about what happened there. Arif, final thoughts, Packers game.
Jordan Love's a fraud. Fraud.
Toyotathon, I checked, ends January 6th, so that's right after the regular season ends.
Fraud.
Why? Is that just? Oh, and by the way, congrats to the Bison for advancing to the FCS championship.
You're not gonna worry about that.
God, don't worry about
it. Just get that last barb in there before we sign off.
No, they when they lose, it's often in horrifying fashion in the semifinals or the final. So again, you don't worry about it. Montana State's still in. I think they've got it. So Jordan Love is a fraud because he engages in high volatility play. He has a high rate of turnover-worthy plays. He's a high rate of tight window throws. The accuracy is inconsistent, not always there. It tends to show up a little bit more in games that people watch a little bit more, and so people have this impression of Love at his best when really he is all over the map. So I think that's part of it. I do think it is relevant that they don't have a wide receiver one, and that's complicating things. And I do want to say, hey, Tucker Kraft is really effing good. So I want to give props to some of these players. But I do think that Jordan Love, who I think is third in EPA per play right now, I get it. I do think that Jordan Love is playing a type of football that hurts you a lot or helps you a lot, but he's not consistent enough to make it one side of that equation. So that's why I keep calling him a fraud, but also because of the bid.
Let's, of course. Let's remember again how the Week 4 game started. Opening drive, Vikings touchdown. Packers, who have switched kickers, by the way, since this game, missed field goal. Vikings touchdown. Packers interception. Kamu Grugier-Hill. Vikings touchdown. Packers missed field goal. Narvison again. Vikings went 3 and out. Packers interception. Vikings one play touchdown. Jefferson one-handed catch. 28-0. And the Packers tried valiantly to come back and failed, and the Vikings won that game. You're not going to get spotted a 28-point lead on Sunday night. It's going to be a little tighter than that. I'm willing to go that far. Vikings 1.5-point favorites. We'll have so much more on this game on Thursday, day after Christmas. Still patching together who's going to be on the show that day, but there will be a crew delivering the Minnesota Football Party to you. And we thank you for watching and listening in the Locked On Vikings podcast feed. Thanks to the commenters. We really, really do appreciate it. Everybody who engages. That's Luke Inman. Check him out in the postcast after every game. That includes Timberwolves and Arif Hasan, Wide Left Substack. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Until next time, thanks for watching the Minnesota Football Party.